right. Thank you all for coming.
This is it?
This is, I guess, this is, so it will be a very customized presentation. I can answer whatever questions you have.
This is awesome.
I'm Tracy Fox, and I live here in the neighborhood over on Lakeland Circle. I've been a Red Crosser for over 20 years and responded to some pretty significant national disasters like Hurricane Sandy, Katrina, Irma, Ian, all the fun ones, as well as a lot of smaller tornadoes and floods and things like that, because I'm originally from Indiana. So I did that before I got into the hurricane business. But we actually moved down here so I could lead the long-term recovery efforts after Hurricane Irma. So that's what brought us from Indiana to Florida. And I just thought, you know, it's an opportunity to share some of the information that the Red Cross has gathered over time. But then I also wanted to customize a little bit of it to make it more appropriate to us here in our neighborhood in Lee County. So I'll run through this, and then, like I said, if you've got any questions about hurricane preparedness or what the Red Cross does or anything like that, I'm happy to take those questions. So we'll jump right in here. We like to make sure everybody understands that it's up to you to be ready. You should never count on getting help right away after a storm, especially after a significant hurricane. And that means you should be prepared to not only help yourself and your family, but we want to make it a little bit more global, your neighbors and your community. If you recognize some of the houses in here, a couple of the photos that I used were after Ian. Dave was here by himself, rode out the storm. I left him and went to DC for work. And so I was actually on Capitol Hill getting text messages from Dave, relaying them to different members of Congress about, here's what's going on in Fort Myers, here's what the neighborhood looks like. And he went out afterwards and took some of the pictures that are in this presentation. So when we talk about being Red Cross ready, we encourage people to get a kit, make a plan, and then be informed. What you can do now, even before any of those steps, and I'm sure you've heard this all on the local TV stations, make sure that you're trimming back your trees and plants. Make sure that if you have any little decorations or lawn furniture that you can bring that in pretty easily. Clean out your drains and downspouts. That just helps if we get the big storms. And now is a great time to do maintenance if you've got lawnmowers, chainsaws, leaf blowers, any kind of lawn equipment that you might want to use after a storm. Make sure that it's all in good working order and you've got plenty of fuel and batteries and things like that now. When a storm approaches, don't wait till the last minute. Don't be those Floridians that are like, oh no, it's fine, I'll go to Publix the day before it's supposed to make landfall. If we've learned anything in our 10 years here in Florida, the forecast always changes. So yeah, they say it's gonna go to Tampa. Go ahead and get your stuff ready anyway, because the track is likely gonna change. And when it's close, when they start making that track, because originally Dave was going to go to DC with me. It was going to hit Tampa. Remember, Ian was going to Tampa. He was going to go with me, and then they started shifting the track. He said, I'm just going to stay here and make sure everything's okay. But the fuel lines get long, the shelves empty out at Publix and Costco and everywhere else. So make sure that you don't wait until the last minute. Take out some cash. If there's no power after a storm, there may be stores that will open up, but they can't take credit cards. Make sure you start charging up all of your phones and devices and getting out those little battery power banks and that kind of thing. And then this was really important when we learned the hard way. Fill up your vehicle, because after the storm, Dave needed to get out to go get bar oil and another kind of fuel for the chainsaw so he could start working on some of the trees. And he's like, I didn't want to drive all over. I only had half a tank of gas. There weren't gas stations open. You don't want to drive all over looking for the supplies that you need. So make sure you've got your vehicle filled up as well. And we'll jump into the three parts of being Red Cross ready. Get a kit or two. It's important. While we are in the last evacuation zone, some people don't want to stay and ride out a storm. Totally understandable. So we encourage everybody to get a kit. One is a go bag. That's if you have to evacuate, whether you go to a shelter or you just go to a hotel or somewhere other than your house. That's going to be like the quick thing you can grab with you. It's needed only for about 3 days for evacuation. And then you'll also have a stay kit, which that's going to be your set of supplies that can last you ideally for 2 weeks. We hope it never takes that long to get through that kind of initial response phase, but make sure you've got enough for 2 weeks. And make sure that whether it's your go bag or your stay bag, that you're taking care of everybody in your house. If you've got anyone in the family who's elderly, if you've got little kids, if you've got teenagers, if you've got pets, make sure that you've got things covered for all of them when you start putting these kits together. If you're leaving, like I said, you want it to sustain you for about 3 days. So if you think about, okay, I'm either going to go to an evacuation shelter, which Gateway High School will probably be our closest one this year. If not, they routinely use South Fort Myers High School as a shelter. But make sure you've got your medications, you've got power banks or chargers for your phone and other devices. You want to take, if you're not going to a hotel, if you're just going to a shelter, make sure you take a pillow and blanket. Never a bad idea to have your own. Make sure you've got your important paperwork. Either have copies with you and the original someplace safe, or you can do digital backups. But anything you need in case it does get damaged at home. A little hygiene kit, so toothpaste, toothbrush, those kinds of things. And then some change of clothes. And this is my favorite. Your favorite snacks. It's going to be stressful. Shelters are not a great environment, no matter how you look at it, other than they're safe. So make sure to bring some of your favorite snacks to get you through the stress. And then you want to customize your kit. If you have medical devices that need to be charged, make sure you've got chargers for them, or you've charged them up as much as you can. If you've got prescription medication, have that. If you've got over-the-counter, make sure you have that. And then think about things that you might need, like canes or walkers or other devices. And this is especially important with the kids. Make sure they have like their favorite toy or some games that they can play, a book to read, just something to help pass the time. If you're staying, and we're talking about 2 weeks, we say, is hopefully the longest that you would have to be. The rule of thumb is to plan for a gallon of water per person per day. And don't forget about your pets if you have pets when you're planning this all out. So these are some of the things you can do now, like if you go on a grocery run, they've got a good sale, stock up on bottled water now instead of right before the storm when everybody's clearing out the shelves. Non-perishable foods, medications, and a good thing to know is most insurance companies now, if there's a storm headed our way, most insurance companies will refill sooner. If you've got like a monthly prescription and they say, oh no, it's too soon, most of them will authorize an early refill so you have a full month and you're not running out in the middle of a hurricane. A first aid kit is always a good thing to have on hand. Flashlights with extra batteries. The hand crank or solar powered radios, you can get those on Amazon or any place. And then, like I said earlier, make sure you've got not only your vehicle filled up, but if you've got chainsaws or other equipment that run on gas, if you think, hey, a grill would come in super handy afterwards if we don't have power, make sure you've got gas for the grill or charcoal for the grill, whatever you need for those things. Some ideas, because I always have people say, yeah, right, like I'm going to sit and eat cold soup out of a can for 2 weeks. So here are some other ideas of non-perishable foods that you can use in a pinch. And I hear that typically our area isn't without power for more than just a couple days, which is a really good thing. But these are just some ideas of things that you can use for those non-perishable foods. But don't forget a can opener if you don't routinely have a can opener at home. I don't know, some people don't, but make sure you've got a can opener. And again, don't forget some treats, because it's going to be crazy, it's going to be stressful, so make sure you've got some treats for yourself and kids as well. Be creative, but stay safe. You can freeze water in advance, and then that does two things. One, you've got extra water if you need it to flush the toilets, to use to wash dishes, whatever. And then you've also got extra frozen water that you can use as ice packs for food. You can use, as I mentioned, a propane or charcoal grill. Just make sure that whatever you're doing, whether it's a generator or it's a grill, that you're staying safe, you're following directions and keeping things outside of the house. And if it gets to the point where you've been without power and you're not sure if the food is still good from the fridge or the freezer, don't take a chance. The last thing you want to do is get yourself sick and have food poisoning in the middle of a hurricane response. The tax-free supplies in Florida, it used to be we just had a couple weeks. These are now tax exempt all year. So don't forget about that when you're out putting together your kits and stocking up on supplies. You don't have to wait for those tax-free weeks anymore. It's all year now. And then, like I said, with your kids and pets, kid-friendly snacks, some coloring books, things like that. For your pets, make sure you've got their food, their treats, some bowls for their food and water. And this is more if you're leaving to an evacuation shelter. A leash and an extra harness, because they're going to be stressed as well and you don't want them taken off. Make sure they've got their ID on their collar. vaccination records, and then ideally, if they're small enough, a carrier or a crate. Speaking of, so in Florida, the shelters are actually run by the county. So every county kind of does their own thing, which makes it super helpful if you're a national organization to work with them. Lee County, I will say, is one of the better counties in the state to work with. But what happens is they'll decide, okay, we're issuing evacuation orders, we need to open shelters, and then after the storm, we need to open more shelters. They partner with organizations like the Red Cross to actually come in and then run those shelters. But one of the great things to know is if you have, or someone in your family has any kind of medical needs or other special needs, accessibility needs, you can go onto the website at Lee County Emergency Management and register. And A, that lets them know that you might need help getting to a shelter if something happens. And B, it makes sure that they plan accordingly to have those shelters with extra medical personnel, extra equipment, a little bit more space for people with any kind of medical issues. So that's a great thing that Lee County does, is they do set aside those shelters for anybody with special needs. One of the other things that Lee County is pretty good about, the Red Cross kept hearing disaster after disaster, whether it was wildfires or hurricanes or whatever the natural disaster. I'm not leaving home without my pets. I mean, we have people that would stay and face storm surge because they weren't leaving without their pets. And so we said, okay, that's crazy. We need to figure this out. So we now work really closely with the government as well as like humane societies or other animal organizations to make sure that there are pet-friendly options. I will tell you at Hertz Arena after Ian, it was like a pet shelter. There were so many animals, but it was really nice because you knew those people were safe. They had their animals, so that was comfort to them. Dave volunteered, he was dog walker for a day. He just went around and said, hey, does your dog need to go outside? So we do have pet-friendly shelters. We do have the medical shelters for medical and other special needs. So don't hesitate to evacuate if it comes down to it for any of those reasons. And this is a lot of what I just talked about. Think about things though, like if somebody in your family routinely travels for work, or you're a snowbird and maybe you're traveling back and forth, just make sure that when you're making a plan, you're considering things like that. Anybody who has, like we talked about, those access needs, functional needs, medical needs, any of your pets and service animals, make sure you write down your contact info, because we all get really reliant on our phones and then go, I have no idea what so-and-so's phone number is. So make sure you're writing all of that down. It's also a good idea to write down a list of your current medications and the dosage. If, worst case scenario, you have to evacuate, you don't have everything with you, the storm is worse than we thought, and you're stuck in an evacuation shelter that turns into a regular shelter, the Red Cross has medical personnel in the shelters that can help you get those medications, but we have to know what they are. Because the doctor's offices aren't going to be open. It's not like they can just call into the pharmacy. So make sure you write down your current medications with dosage and keep that with you along with your other important documents. Make sure you have the right details in your plan. I mentioned we're in the furthest out evacuation zone, so the chances of us having a mandatory evacuation for Silverlakes, I'm going to knock on wood and say, are pretty slim. But like I said, that's not to say you might go, this is cutting it a little close. I think I'm going to go to the high school just to be safe, which is totally fine. Nobody faults you for that. But make sure you know what zone we're in, so as they do start to call those out, if you've got family and friends that are closer to the coast, they're going to be obviously affected first. Talk about with your family and with your friends and maybe even with your neighbors, hey, we're not going to go to the shelter, but we're going to go ahead and go inland and stay at a hotel in Lakeland or wherever you're going to go, so everybody knows where you are. And also for your family outside of the area, make sure you're communicating the plan with them, because if cell towers go down, if your battery drains out completely and they're panicking trying to figure out where you are, that way they know, okay, this was the plan, they were going to go here. As soon as they can charge up their phone, we'll hear from them. We do have some free resources online. This emergency contact card is a great prompt just to write down all of the numbers that you won't be able to find on your phone if it dies. And then most of what I'm talking about is also available online with hurricane checklists. The Red Cross has them, Lee County has them, Florida has them. I mean, you can find a million different versions of the hurricane checklist to walk you through what supplies you should have on hand. The last part of it is be informed. And again, there are a number of ways to do this. Lee County does a great job. If you go to their website, they've got alert systems that you can get on, so you get phone calls and text messages and emails. They've got an app that will also alert you. Most of the local TV stations have weather apps that will send you alerts. So download all of those if you've got that capability on your phone. If not, you want to make sure you've got some kind of power or solar powered battery or solar powered radio so you can stay up to date on alerts. I will tell you, after Ian, one of the things that was the hardest for Dave is when cell service was out. He had no way of, he's like, I could hear the storm, but he had no way of knowing what was going on bigger picture, because you don't have internet, you don't have TV, he didn't have a radio, shame on him. So if you don't have those capabilities on your phone, make sure you've got that radio as backup. And then, always a reminder, make sure you've got a way to charge your phone and other devices. There are some really cool little power banks that have solar panels on them, so once the storm goes through and we get the sun back out, you can just have those out in your yard to fill up the power bank and then charge up your phones. The other thing I would encourage everybody to do, of course, is download the Red Cross Emergency app. This is one that we just updated recently, and you can put in your location. You can also, if you've got family and friends elsewhere in the country, you can track them. So like my mom is still in Indiana, I get notifications if there's a severe thunderstorm warning or if there's a blizzard warning for her zip code. It gives you all of the weather information. It also gives you all of these tips and all of these checklists for how to prepare for hurricanes or floods or wildfires or whatever the disaster might be. It's all in one handy little app, and it's all totally free. There's nothing about it that asks you to pay money or anything. It's all completely free. After the storm, you make sure it's safe to go out. I mean, everybody, or maybe just my husband, wants to go out. I'm like, stupid, that's the eye of the storm. Get back inside. But make sure it's safe to go out. Check on your family, your friends, your neighbors. He was down the street to help somebody with a tree and opened the truck door, and a gust of wind caught it and broke the door of our truck. So that's why it's always a good idea to make sure it's safe before you go out. When you do start cleaning up debris and things like that, make sure that you're taking breaks. Know that it's a process. Everything's not gonna be back to normal quickly, and take advantage of available resources. I can't tell you the number of times I've been on a disaster response and the Red Cross goes out and we offer individual assistance, which is just money. We give people financial assistance to use however they see fit for their family in that moment. And I'll have people say, oh, I don't need it. You should go give it to John down the street. I don't need it that bad. Go give it to somebody else. And we always have to explain, there's enough to go around. So don't be afraid to take advantage of those available resources, whether it's the Red Cross or other groups that come in and offer cleanup, or if it's a really bad situation, they take the mud out of your house. There are lots of opportunities for people to come in and help. That said, be cautious, because we all know after a big storm, the contractors flood in, they're not licensed, they want deposits up front, they take off with your money. That's the downside of it. So just be sure, if you do have somebody offering help, that it's a legitimate organization and they're not trying to take advantage of you. And more just about staying safe, statistically, after a storm is the most dangerous time. If you take storm surge and water out of the equation, it's absolutely the most dangerous time, because there are down power lines, people are getting hurt with debris, you think things are stable and they're not stable. People try to do too much and they overexert themselves and you have heart issues. It's a really stressful time, so people's bodies are a little keyed up anyway. So again, just make sure that you're looking out for all of those dangers out there. And then this is actually a photo from over in Cocoa Bay on the way out to Sanibel. We took this after Ian, and it's a situation where something in the house, when the storm hit, there was water that got in because they were closer to the coastline. Water got in and a fire started, and there's no way for the firefighters to get there in the middle of a hurricane, and so the house was a total loss. I mean, you can see their car still sitting there in their garage. So just make sure that you're doing everything safely after a storm so you don't become a secondary disaster for yourself. And mental health is important. It can be really anxiety-inducing and stress-inducing when the storm's coming. So you want to be prepared, you want to know what's going on, but try not to obsess, because like I said, this track's always going to change. It can intensify, it can lose intensity and lessen, but being prepared can really help eliminate some of that anxiety and stress and make you a little bit more able to deal with some of this. There are lots of resources online. There are some free apps that are out there as well. And just know if you ever find yourself in a Red Cross shelter, in addition to the health workers, we also have mental health professionals that can just listen, talk you through what's going on, maybe what's causing the anxiety. If you're nervous about what's it gonna look like when I get home, how do I get my life back in order, all those types of things, we've got people there that can help with that. And another great way to prepare, we also have a first aid app. This is actually the part of the Red Cross that I work in now. We just updated this. It's got really cool features. Again, it's totally free. It's got step-by-step instructions. If you go, oh gee, I just ran a nail through my foot, I'm not sure what to do, you can look through the app and it's going to give you step-by-step instructions what to do. If you're in an area that you're not familiar with, you can say, where's the nearest hospital? It's going to tell you where the hospital is. It's going to ask you if you want to call 911 right from the app, and they can help locate you through the app. So it's a really cool app. I encourage everybody to have that on hand as well. I mean, everything from cuts and scrapes to CPR is on that app. And again, totally free. We update it pretty regularly. So that's another great thing you can have on hand. And then these are just some of the resources. I mentioned everybody's got their own version of a hurricane checklist, but these are some of the resources that I use all the time. We've got lots out on redcross.org. Lee County Emergency Management has a ton out there, and like I said, they have their own emergency app as well. The Florida Department of Emergency Management has a lot of good information. And then for mental health, NAMI, which is a National Mental Health Organization, has a branch here in Southwest Florida. They've got some good resources available. So those are some good free resources you can check out. And again, just make sure that whatever you're looking at is authentic, that it's something official, because there are a lot of sites that look similar to like the state of Florida. So just make sure that the information you're getting, and anytime anybody asks you to pay for anything, to pay for services, especially after a storm, always do your homework and make sure it's legit before you give somebody, like I said, a deposit to start work or anything. If they tell you, well, if you give me $10, I can get you $100 in assistance, that's probably not a legit thing. So just use your best judgment when it comes